Paul from Hashtag Sports. So, a little bit of an off-cycle episode for us. We're now officially into the Buffalo Bills off-season, but I wanted to jump on. I had read a series of tweets from Mike Florio, and some people love Mike Florio, and some people don't. But the one thing I will say is that in the world of sports journalism, I have a tendency to really trust Florio over a lot of other people. Again, integrity is really important to me, and Florio, when he says something, has never really backed down from that, and has always supported his opinions. Of course, nobody's perfect, and I'm sure everybody can think of multiple reasons to not like Mike Florio, but in the world of sports journalism, I'll trust Mike Florio over anybody else, if it's against just about anybody. And I'd love to have him on the show one day, but we're not there yet. But today we're going to go over some tweets that he sent out, and he kind of recaps the Buffalo Bills 2022 season. And there's a lot here. So I'm just going to read the tweets and then kind of recap exactly where this Bills team is now that we enter the 2023 offseason officially. But here's the tweets in total from Mike Florio. This was sent out officially Monday. Yesterday, I said that Josh Allen covers up a lot of bad for the Bills, and people were quick to say he's not without blame. And obviously, no QB is when their team loses that way. But I don't think people realize fully how much he has covered up for people in that building. Sean McDermott likely isn't going to go anywhere, but for someone whose top qualities are leadership and defensive prowess, he always seems to get outcoached in the big games, and the defense always seems to be the ones crumbling. The last 4 playoff exits blew a multiple score second half lead, blown out by KC, 13-second kickoff in yesterday. The defense can bully bad teams in the regular season, but can't stop a good one when they have to. At this point, it's a trend, an inexcusable one at that. He could have stopped there. It gets much better. Brandon Beane gets such high regard for finding Allen, but that 2018 class was the last that had any Pro Bowl players. So much capital has been wasted on undersized D linemen who can't generate pressure against a backup offensive line. They drafted a cornerback in the first round they were too scared to use for most of the season, despite the secondary issues. The big addition to the offseason was a pass-catching running back. The big addition to the offense was a pass-catching running back, only to never throw the ball to running backs. The O-line got ignored despite clear issues. And that's the frustrating part. It's like there's no real plan. The game plan didn't fit the personnel at all. The Bills receiver rooms had 2 receivers who could win outside or downfield and a bunch of slot guys, and then operated an offense built around the deep ball. There was no quick pass to this aspect to this offense at all. The slot wide receiver role vanished. Allen was expected to scramble to avoid pressure and find someone deep, which is even harder when your best deep threat has questionable hands and routinely drops well-placed ones, much like yesterday. The Bills hired a first-year play caller in the most offensive-driven era in NFL history in their championship window, despite one not having won a Super Bowl in over 30 years. Just short-sighted moves that never seemed to gel with any sort of actual plan. There was never any situational football with this team. Yesterday, on maybe the biggest play of the day, 3rd and 2, they threw 40 yards deep and then punted. It largely felt like Dorsey would just pick a play at random. And not just yesterday, this was all year long. They can out-talent teams in the regular season, and Josh Allen is a unicorn who can play hero ball and save the day most of the time. But if he has an off game, this team has no shot of beating an actual good team. The roster is very flawed, and now it's aging with little cap. Take Allen off this team, and I'm not sure they are 500. Turnovers have been an issue, but that's to be expected when Allen is asked to match Mahomes or Burrow stats with his arm while also being the team's RB1. It's a ton to ask any player, especially with this play calling. The approach to building this team needs to change. It can't be invest in the defense and Allen will carry the offense every game. If McDermott and Frazier can't figure it out with so much invested into it, change gears. If there was ever a time to change, it's now. The defense has been built around 6 players. 2 are free agents, Poyer and Edmonds. 3 are working back from severe injuries in Von Miller-White and Micah Hyde, and the other is Matt Milano. I don't know how they work around those contracts, but they have to try and mix it up. Start loading up around Allen and trying to outscore everyone. It's basically what they have to do in the playoffs anyway. I'm frustrated, as I'm sure many Bills fans are right now, will 100% be back next year, but really hoping we see some changes before then. Adding one thing here, no juice in the biggest game of the season at home with DeMar in the building is absolutely inexcusable. The Bills were dominated in a way they haven't been in years. No juice. What are we doing here? I think it's all great points and all accurate points. And you could get frustrated at the tone of it and frustrated about, how it could sound like he's demeaning the Bills. But the truth is, the Bills pushed all the chips into the table for this run. Next year is dangerous. They have 37 players and are already over the salary cap. And I know everybody's going to say, well, Paul, you just rework contracts. That's what you did this year. Just keep restructuring contracts. Right. And what ends up happening is you turn into the Seattle Seahawks, where the last 3 seasons that they had Russell Wilson, they were just shambles, barely holding on to a 500 record, not making the playoffs, and still accounting for players that had already left their team. And when you restructure contracts, that's what you're doing. And Brandon Beane has already set you up for that, unfortunately. And people talk about, oh, Brandon Beane's amazing. He can do all these things. Yeah, Brandon Beane did do a lot of things, and that comes with insurmountable risk at the backside. And we're nearing that insurmountable risk, probably 2 years closer than a lot of people realize. The Bills have 37 players on the roster and are already $8 million over the salary cap for next season. That is not including Tremaine Edmonds. That's not including Jordan Poyer. That's not including Devin Singletary. That's not rebuilding your entire offensive line, of which I don't even know where I'd start. You have an aging center, random guards. Deion Dawkins played probably the worst season of his career, and Spencer Brown, while battling injuries, still would just at times not be the athlete you drafted. Florio brings up an interesting point. You spend a lot of your resources on the defense. 100% correct. Josh Allen hasn't had a first-round offensive player drafted with him. This team was loaded up with slot receivers. Buffalo doesn't throw the ball short. What are you doing? Right? You brought back John Brown and Cole Beasley because you knew that they could make a positive impact for you because you didn't really know what else to do. When you lost Von Miller, it was after the trade deadline. You thought that Von would be the piece to bring these young ends together. And for a while, he was. But losing Von showed you what a contributor and what an athlete he is. And you've got a first and second round player, actually 2 second round defensive ends that, again, Boogie would contribute occasionally. AJ Epinesa, again, like, this is not what I want. And unfortunately, you run out of resources in order to address the things that you need. And when you walk into 2023, that's going to be a big theme for Buffalo, and a big one we're going to talk about on this channel, that the resources that you have, you don't have as many as you think. The way that you can approach things, it's not going to be like it has been. And I think there's a large contingent of people that want to see Sean McDermott gone because of the way that game was managed. And while I understand that's not going to happen, you may want Sean Payton. That's not going to happen. Sean McDermott isn't going anywhere. Brandon Beane isn't going anywhere. They've built this. They've gotten the opportunity to build it. Now they're going to have the opportunity to try and save it. And when I say save, I really do mean that. There's a lot of problems with this Bills offense that winning oftentimes covers up and fixes for a short period of time. Your best receiver is Stephon Diggs. Your next best receiver is at best a wide receiver 3. And I like Gabe Davis. Khalil Shakur could be a great piece for you, but we don't know. And you certainly can't bank on it going into 2023. Your secondary is an absolute disaster. But again, that's what happens when you have to put all your resources across your defensive line. And now you're probably looking for a middle linebacker on top of it, right? And even somebody like Tremaine Edmonds, they never seem to leverage his skill set to the way that would make him a devastating defensive player. Like, watching Tremaine, he's improved significantly this year. It's probably the best year of his career. Yet it wasn't enough for me. And I could say that even though he's going to be, 23? Like, it's not enough for me. And you can re-sign Tremaine and bet on the fact that he's going to continue a Hall of Fame career, and this is just the start of the improvement. You did wait a while to get it because he was a stagnant player for a while. However, now that you're here, yes, you can pay Tremaine, but that means you're losing Poyer. That means you're not going to really be able to re-sign Milano. You can This will be the last year with Ed. You don't have Jordan Phillips back, who was probably your best defensive tackle all season next to Ed Oliver, and he was a free agent. Daquan Jones was a non-contributor just over the length of the season. Tim Settle was nice at times, but again, the money that you pay him, I can't really see the value there. And you really have to question what you're doing. What are we doing here? It's a great point. I thank Mike Florio for being honest as a fan of the NFL, and as a Bills fan. I think this is an honest message, and it's not going to be a well received one, and that's okay. Honest conversations aren't always well received, and here we know that we're always going to try and be as honest with you as possible. Whenever the Bills were restructuring contracts, every time it was okay. It makes sense now. We'll see what this looks like, because when you restructure contracts, you don't see the fallout of that until a couple of years down the road. And we're going to go over some contracts during this offseason that you're going to look at and say, ooh, I don't know what Buffalo can do about that. A Deion Dawkins extension is likely coming. After what you guys saw last week, you might not really want that. But Deion Dawkins' contract is going to get extended. And the reason Deion Dawkins' contract is going to get extended is because he's got 2 voided years, which means years that don't actually exist but hide salary cap money. And unfortunately, when you look at Deion's deal, the only place to put money now is to turn those voided years into actual player years. So Deion Dawkins is going to get his contract extended. They're going to rework those voided deals into regular player deals. And that's going to allow them more opportunity to slide more money. It's going to happen. You may not want it to happen, but it's going to happen. Josh Allen is going to restructure his contract again, and he's going to have to for the next 3 years, 4 years. Every year he's going to have to restructure his contract. It's going to be the way that it is. We'll see what happens with Stephon Diggs. I know people are frustrated with him. He's a competitor. I'm not mad at Stephon Diggs. I'm not mad at him for being frustrated that he was the only true wide receiver on this team that could contribute with 10 targets. Like Gabe Davis in the playoffs, 10 targets, 3 receptions. I love Gabe Davis as a wide receiver 3. That's where you are. So what do you do? What do you do? It's good questions, man. Good questions. Paul from #Sports.
Hello, fellow Bills fans. Sean Rogers, realtor and lead of the Mr. Rogers Homes team. Did you know that real estate is one of the best ways to build wealth, and right now is one of the best times to own an investment property in Arizona? Please reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to answer any of your questions so we can take the next step to your financial freedom here in the Valley of the Sun, utilizing real estate. As always, God bless America and go Buffalo!